Despite all the narratives, Donald Trump's in a strong position to win the presidency. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and today we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because Donald Trump's in a good position to win. And I know everyone's gonna say, but the polling, Trump is down in the polls, he's gonna lose because the polls are showing him down, which I'm not going to deny that there are some polls out there that are not good for Trump. I'm not denying that. I'm not one of those people that think every poll that has Trump down is fake. That's not true. There are plenty of good pollsters like TIPP that has him down by 3 to 4 points. Good pollsters like Emerson, same deal. But to claim that Trump is in a bad position right now is absolutely crazy. I'm not denying the possibility that he could be down, he could be losing. That's possible, fine. But we got people out here claiming that a 1-point lead for Harris is actually great news for her. That's proof that she's gonna win. Yeah, people actually believe that. So you know what? Let's go back to 2020 and 2016. You know, the most recent presidential elections, and compare the polling. Because I think a lot of people are just forgetting that back in 2020 and 2016, the polls were way worse for Trump. I mean, seriously, this was only 4 years ago. Look at this. In September of 2020, September 2nd to be exact, it was Biden plus 7. Yeah, it ended up being Biden plus 4.5. So the polls at the same point, back in 2020, were off by 2 to 3 points. Yeah, 2016, you scroll down here, September 2nd, 2016, it was Clinton plus 4. Yet again, the polls were off by roughly 2 to 3 points. So if you apply the same miss to the current polling average right now, it would actually be a Trump lead, a small one, but a Trump lead in the popular vote. That's a big deal. You're talking about a 5-point shift in just 4 years. And if Trump wins the popular vote, which I'm not saying is going to, but if he does, which, by the way, the polls actually kind of suggest that, he's going to win easily. How the hell can he do 5 points better nationally, but by some miracle not do any better in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania? How is that even possible? Where is he doing so much better in? Maybe Florida? Maybe Texas? Fine. But to claim that Trump could, win the popular vote but somehow lose a state like Wisconsin? I guess it's possible, but to claim it's a legitimate possibility is crazy. But some people actually believe that Harris can lose the popular vote but somehow be the favorite? No. If Trump really does win the popular vote, which I'm not saying he will, but let's say he does, at that point, he's the clear favorite. He has like a 99.9% chance of winning. Because you're talking about a 5-point shift nationally. Do you really think a state like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, every swing state, not just one of them, but every swing state would buck the trend and vote to the left and vote for Harris? No, I highly doubt that. But alright, you might not be convinced, like, okay, maybe the polling could be spot on this cycle. Even in that scenario, which I don't think that's the case because there are some real bad polls out there that inflated Harris's margin. But okay, let's say fine. By some miracle, the polling is spot on. A Harris plus 2 popular vote more than likely results in a Trump win. You see the problem? The only way you can look at the current RCP average as good news for Harris is if there's a polling miss in favor of Harris. Yeah, that means instead of favoring Trump by a point or 2, it has to favor Harris by 2 points. Think about that. That hasn't happened since 2012, and by most accounts, that was a fluke. 2008, 2004, they overstated Democrats, not as much as 2020 or 2016, but they still did. In the national polling, they were off by a point or so, but they still were off. You see the problem? you need an ahistorical polling miss for Harris to be the favorite. Just in the national polling. And you know what? Let's look at the state-by-state polling. Let's look at Wisconsin. Harris +1. For Wisconsin standards, which, by the way, that Bloomberg poll's a joke. If it wasn't for the Bloomberg poll, this would be a Trump lead. But fine, let's assume that by some miracle it's Harris +1 in the RCP average. Even in that scenario, if there's a polling miss similar to that of 2020 or 2016, you're talking about Trump +2, Trump +3, Trump +4. You see the problem? So if you don't include the Bloomberg poll, it's Trump plus whatever. But even if you include it, if a polling miss happens similar to 2020 or 2016, that's a big Trump win in Wisconsin. This is the problem. Even you look at the swing states, it becomes apparent. These leads Harris has, they're nothing. They're nothing. Pennsylvania, same deal. Harris +0.5. Yet again, you have the garbage Quinnipiac and Bloomberg polls that had Harris +4, Harris +3, when every other pollster has a Trump lead. But okay, let's say it's really Harris +0.5 in the average. Back in 2016, the polls were off by 7 points here. 2020, by 3. In other words, Trump is leading in Pennsylvania. You can keep going. Georgia, it's a small Trump lead. Arizona, right now, it's a small Trump lead. Which, by the way, people make it sound like polling in Arizona usually overstates Republicans. It doesn't. I mean, for crying out loud, back in 2020, at the same point, the polls were Biden +5. He won by like a half a point. Even back in 2016, the polls in 2016 in Arizona, they were claiming right before November, the polls are showing Clinton +3. He's slightly down in the state. Or if he is winning, he's up by maybe a point. He won by like 3 points. You see the problem? Even if the RCP average is correct and you include these big outliers, well, if the same polling miss occurs, that's a Trump win. That's a Trump win in virtually every swing state, and not just by a half a point. States like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even Michigan. You're talking about Trump +3s, 4s, 5s. That's the problem here. Harris she's slightly ahead in a bunch of these swing states, fine. But these leads compared to 2020 or 2016, they're pathetic. And these should worry Democrats because if the same polling miss occurs, Trump is winning every swing state. I'm not even kidding. He's probably the favorite in every swing state if the polling miss occurs. And again, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but what do you think's going to happen? Do you really think that by some miracle this cycle, the polls are going to overstate Trump? It's possible, but it's so unlikely that I don't think it occurs. But there are other metrics to indicate that Trump's in a really good position. Look at favorability for a second. Back in 2016, Trump's net favorability was -21. Yeah, -21. Worse than Clinton's. People make it sound like that Trump was so well liked back then, especially compared to Clinton. No, he wasn't. It was actually the opposite. His favorability was like, I think it was 15 points worse than Clinton's or something like that. Neither was liked, but Trump was way more unliked, at least according to the polling. Yet he won. And as of now, his favorability is only -9. That's a 12-point shift in 8 years. Hell, compared to 2020, it's improved. Yeah, in 2020, it was roughly -12, -13. Right now, it's -9, -8. That's a 3-point improvement compared to 2020. And Harris's favorability, while it's getting better by some miracle, it's still nowhere near as good as Biden's was back in 2020. So looking at favorability numbers, Trump's in his strongest position. He is. His net favorability, it's still underwater, but it's way better than it was just 4 years ago, especially 8 years ago. That's the problem. The more you look at this, the more it becomes apparent that, wait a minute, Trump's favorabilities are the best they've ever been. His polls across the board are very strong. Yeah, some of these states are Harris leads, but compared to 2020 and 2016, they're very small leads for Democrats, and that should make them worried that they're barely winning Wisconsin. That's the problem. If these polling misses occur, Trump's winning everywhere. Now, I'm not saying Trump's going to win in a historical landslide. No one should bank on that. I'm not saying that at all. But if you have Trump polling the best he's ever polled at this time, this is an apples to apples comparison. In 2016, he was getting crushed. 2020, same deal. Right now, he's either winning most swing states or he's slightly down by like a half a point. Even the national polling, it's only Harris +2. Back in 2020, it was Biden +7, excuse me. That's the more you look at this, it's just a disaster for Democrats. And that's why I think, despite the polling on paper looking like a small Harris lead, in reality, it's really not. This is not the Harris lead that they were expecting. They wanted Harris +5, Harris +6, not Harris +2. But fine, ignore all of that. Let's say by some miracle, the polling is worthless, you should ignore it, don't look at it, fine. You know what? There's other metrics to indicate Trump's in a good position, such as TV spending. Remember how back in 2020 and 2016, Democrats had this big advantage in TV spending? And how that was proof that Trump is gonna lose? Yeah, about that. As of now, Trump and Republicans have spent more in this presidential race than Democrats in the Harris campaign. Republicans in total have spent around $143 million. Democrats have spent $138 million. And you can look at the campaigns, and yes, Harris's campaign has spent a little bit more, but when you add up all the outside groups, add up everything, Republicans are outspending Democrats by roughly $6 million. Which, by the way, I thought that Democrats were crushing Republicans on this front. Remember that narrative? 2 weeks ago, everyone was saying Republicans are getting killed on the air. They're getting outspent 10-1. In reality, they're not. In fact, they're actually outspending Democrats. And in states like Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, they're spending more. And in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, they're actually spending about the same as Democrats. Like, Democrats have leads in those states, but they're like by $300,000. Who cares? They're spending basically the same amount. Compare that to 2020. Look at this. Democrats led by $40 million on TV spending. And in every state, they were killing Trump on the air. Florida, they were up by $13 million. Pennsylvania, $5 million. Wisconsin, $4 million. Arizona, $3 million. North Carolina, $3 million. Michigan, $6 million. And they were tied in Ohio. Yeah. So in other words, Trump has flipped the TV spending on its head. Back in 2020 and 2016, he was getting crushed on this front. But now, he's actually running even, actually slightly ahead in most of the swing states. Does this look like a campaign that's very weak? Does this look like a campaign that's about to get crushed in every swing state? When in reality, these are their best numbers ever. I really want to know why people think that the Trump campaign's in such a bad position. Based on what? There's nothing here that indicates a weak campaign. In fact, it's actually the opposite, especially compared to 2020. This is a strong campaign. Trump's in a strong position to win. Does that mean he's going to win every swing state by 15 points? No. And TV spending isn't everything. But when you factor in every metric like the head-to-head polling, favorability, voter registration, everything, it becomes very apparent Republicans are in a good position to take back the White House. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.